Right now, your position in every group you belong to is being constantly evaluated, not formally and not consciously, but through small signals. Who responds to you? Who ignores you? Who includes you? You can detect shifts in this almost immediately. A delayed reply feels different from a direct one. Being excluded from a conversation feels different from being interrupted inside it. You already track this. What you may not realize is that this sensitivity is not modern. It is ancient, and it was built for a very specific problem. The obvious assumption is that bullying is simply an individual behavior, one person imposing on another. That explanation is incomplete. Across human societies, including small-scale hunter-gatherer groups, bullying rarely persists unchecked. This creates a contradiction. If dominance and aggression offer advantages, why do most human groups remain relatively cooperative and, in many cases, strongly egalitarian? The real question is not just how individuals bully, but how groups respond when someone does. And the pattern that emerges is consistent, structured, and very old. The evidence begins with the structure of early human groups. For most of our evolutionary history, humans lived in small bands, typically ranging from 20 to 50 individuals. These were not anonymous populations. Everyone knew everyone else. Resources were shared, cooperation was constant, and survival depended on group cohesion. Archaeological and ethnographic records show repeated signs of this structure: shared hearths, coordinated hunting sites, and living spaces organized around collective use rather than individual control. This means that any one individual's behavior had immediate consequences for the group. Within these environments, dominance created a problem. A physically strong or aggressive individual could, in theory, monopolize resources, intimidate others, or disrupt cooperation. But the archaeological record does not show stable hierarchies of this kind in most foraging societies. Instead, what anthropologists observe in modern hunter-gatherers, used cautiously as analogs, are systems that actively suppress such behavior. Reports from groups like the Kung, Hadza, and Inuit describe consistent responses to individuals who attempt to dominate. They are mocked, criticized, ignored, or, in extreme cases, expelled or killed. This pattern is not random. It appears across geographically and culturally distinct groups. This suggests it is not a local invention, but a recurring solution. Researchers have described this as a reverse dominance hierarchy. Instead of one individual controlling the group collectively controls any individual who attempts to dominate. The mechanism is social, not physical. It relies on coordination rather than strength. One of the primary tools in this system is ostracism. This is the deliberate exclusion or ignoring of an individual. It can be temporary or permanent. It can be subtle, such as reduced interaction, or explicit, such as expulsion from the group. What matters is the effect. In a small, interdependent group, exclusion removes access to shared food, protection, and social support. The evidence from ethnographic accounts shows that even brief periods of exclusion are used to signal disapproval and enforce norms. This means that bullying behavior did not exist in isolation. It triggered a response, and that response was often collective. Gossip is another component. Information about an individual's behavior spreads through the group, shaping reputation. This is not trivial. In small groups, reputation directly affects cooperation. If others perceive you as aggressive or unreliable, they reduce interaction with you. This creates a feedback loop. The more someone attempts to dominate, the more the group withdraws cooperation. What this tells you is that early human groups had mechanisms to regulate behavior without formal institutions. There were no written laws, no centralized authority, and no formal enforcement systems. Instead, enforcement was distributed. Each member contributed to monitoring and responding to behavior. This system is efficient in small groups because information travels quickly and coordination is manageable. The mechanism behind this can be understood in terms of cost and benefit. For any individual, confronting a bully directly is risky. But if multiple individuals act together, through coordinated exclusion, criticism, or withdrawal of support, the cost shifts. The bully becomes isolated. Their ability to impose costs on others decreases. At the same time, their own costs increase. This creates a strong incentive to conform. This suggests that bullying in early humans was not simply tolerated or ignored. It was actively managed. The group had an interest in maintaining cooperation because cooperation increased survival. Any behavior that threatened that cooperation triggered a response. The response did not rely on a single leader. It emerged from the group. However, this system only works if individuals are highly sensitive to social feedback. This is where the second layer of evidence becomes important. Neuroscience research shows that social rejection activates brain regions associated with physical pain. Experiments involving mild forms of exclusion, such as being ignored in a simple game, produce measurable distress. The same neural systems that processed physical injury are involved in processing social exclusion. This means that social pain is not metaphorical. It is a real, measurable response, and it is triggered by relatively small signals. The implication is that humans evolved a low threshold for detecting social threat. Even minor changes in inclusion or exclusion produce a response. This makes sense in the context of small, interdependent groups. Missing early signs of exclusion could be dangerous. In ancestral environments, being excluded from the group was not a temporary inconvenience. It was a serious risk. A single individual, without access to shared resources or protection, would struggle to survive. Hunting alone is inefficient. Defending against predators is difficult. Raising offspring without support is costly. This means that exclusion could lead to death, directly or indirectly. Researchers have described this as social death. This explains why the response is so strong. The brain treats social exclusion as a threat to survival. It does not distinguish between physical injury and social rejection at a high level of processing. Both are signals that something is wrong and requires immediate attention. This creates a system where individuals are motivated to avoid exclusion and maintain group membership. Now consider how this interacts with bullying. On one side, individuals who are targeted by aggression or exclusion experience strong distress. On the other side, groups use that same mechanism, exclusion, as a tool to regulate behavior. This creates a dual system. The same sensitivity that makes social rejection painful also makes it effective as a form of punishment. This suggests that bullying and its control are not separate phenomena. They are part of the same system. The capacity to impose social costs exists alongside the capacity to experience them. Groups can leverage this to maintain cooperation. Individuals can exploit it to impose dominance. The balance between these forces determines the outcome. The constraint in this system is that it is not perfectly controlled. Not all individuals respond in the same way. Some may be more resistant to social pressure. Others may be more sensitive. Genetic variation, developmental factors, and environmental context all influence behavior. This means that bullying can still occur, and in some cases persist, especially if coordination among the rest of the group is weak. There is also a coordination problem. For ostracism or collective punishment to work, multiple individuals must act in a similar way. If some continue to cooperate with the bully while others withdraw, the effect is reduced. This creates an incentive for individuals to align their responses. Gossip and shared information help solve this by synchronizing perceptions of behavior. Another limitation is that exclusion itself can be misused. Groups can target individuals who deviate from norms, even if that deviation is not harmful. This means that the same mechanisms used to suppress bullying can also enforce conformity more broadly. The system does not inherently distinguish between beneficial and harmful deviations. It responds to perceived violations. What this tells you is that early human social systems were adaptive, but not ideal. They solved the problem of dominance and aggression in a way that increased group stability, but they also introduced new risks. The balance between inclusion and exclusion, cooperation and control, is dynamic. When you bring this back to the present, the pattern is still visible. Modern forms of bullying often involve social exclusion, reputation damage, and coordinated withdrawal of interaction. These are not new behaviors. They are extensions of older mechanisms. At the same time, responses to bullying, public criticism, collective action, social sanctions follow similar patterns. The scale has changed, but the structure has not. The evidence shows that ancient humans dealt with bullies not primarily through direct confrontation, but through coordinated social pressure. Ostracism, gossip, and in extreme cases, removal from the group were used to limit the power of aggressive individuals. This was effective because group membership was essential for survival, and the human brain evolved to treat social exclusion as a serious threat. What this means in simple terms is that early human societies built systems where no single individual could dominate without facing collective resistance. The cost of being excluded was high enough to enforce compliance, and the sensitivity to that cost was built into the human mind. So when you notice small shifts in how others respond to you, or feel the impact of being ignored or excluded, you are not reacting to a modern social inconvenience. You are responding to signals that for most of human history determined whether you remained inside the group or outside it.